guys, we are reading the book Communication Skill written by the author Sanjay Kumar. So we'll start learning for communication skill. So let's start. I am reading the first chapter. First chapter name I present you find fundamentals of communication. फर्स्ट चैप्टर का नेम है ये कम्युनिकेशन एंड ओवरव्यू. सो मैं फर्स्ट सेकेंड थर्ड फोर्थ 5 6 8 9 पेज रीड कर चुकी हूँ एंड मैं 10 नंबर का जो पेज वो भी कंप्लीट होने वाला है. अब मैं 11 पेज पर आ रही हूँ. तो यहाँ से रीडिंग करना स्टार्ट करते हैं. वेरिएशंस इन लैंग्वेज. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. आपका काम है यहाँ पे सुनने का. आप सुनिए बस. वेरिएशंस इन लैंग्वेज. While communicating with others, we cannot overlook the fact that certain words and idiomatic expressions are culture specific. If we do not use them appropriately in the respective culture context, it might lead to ambiguity or miscommunication. For instance, what is called sidewalk in the US is known as pavement in Britain, whereas in India it is referred to as platform. Similarly, it is apartment in the US, flat in Britain, and house in India. In the same way, we find in Britain to tell a proposal means to act on it, whereas in America it means to defer it. Non-verbal barriers for communication skill. Apart from dealing with these aforementioned barriers, one needs to keep in mind the challenge arising from some non-verbal barriers. This to derail the process of communication quite often. Display of inappropriate bodily language, choice of faulty paralinguistic cues in communicating a particular tone or mood, and utter disregard for other person's comfort zone in communication scenario may lead to confusion, perplexity, and even embarrassment. In fact, in the event of a verbal and non-verbal message clashing, it is the non-verbal cues that the receivers tend to trust more. For instance, lack of eye contact may make a speaker look evasive despite their great oratory. Similarly, a slow dawdle towards the podium may make the audience lose interest in a speaker despite their enormous reputation. In the same way, when a presenter keeps their hands constantly in the pockets, fiddles with the key rings, adjusts the tie note frequently, twitches their nose, or just sits crossed legs, effectiveness in communication is crippled. For further details, refer to Chapter 12 on non-verbal communication, which deals with the topic in greater detail. Effective listening. Mobile games. New age very effective listening. We need to have a big conference room where we may accommodate a large gathering. Listening barriers. If presenting ideas effectively to others is a big challenge, listening to others is a bigger one. Just as speaking effectively requires preparation, authenticity, and conviction, listening to others requires attention, empathy, and interest in what the speaker is saying. In fact, poor listening occurs far more frequently in human situations than ineffective speaking. Poor listening results in incomplete, incorrect, and inconsistent responses. Despite that, Many among the audience may not listen to a speaker and continue to fake listening. Some others in the audience might be too busy interpreting the speaker's background and body movements, and few more may just be traveling down memory lane or remain lost in reach. Such fragmented and dodgy listening habits only derail the process of effective communication. It is so because effective listening requires concentration, patience, and focus. However, the turbulence characterizing a quintessential 21st century quirky mind renders the whole task extremely challenging. That is why tough there are many speakers around us but just a few listeners. The poor listening give gives rise to multiple types of barriers of verbal and non-verbal kind. It is directly responsible for causing the barrier commonly referred to as premature evaluation of the message. Because of this habit, listeners may jump to a hasty conclusion, approve or reject what is being said, or generalize the ideas with faulty perceptions and sweeping observations. All such attitudes impede or stall the process of effective communication. Some reasons which may lead to listening barriers in the communication environment are enumerated below. Spot your barriers while listening. Remaining occupied in one's thought process. Being distracted by something that is not part of the ongoing discussion, getting ahead of the speaker and completing their thoughts, passing comments, nudging the listener sitting beside you, forgetting what is being discussed, asking too many questions for the sake of probing. All such flawed responses to the task of listening have been elaborately discussed in Chapter 11 on effective listening and comprehension skill, physical and mechanical barriers. Closed office doors, physical distance between the communicators and disturbance in transmission channels create physical barriers. Research shows that one of the most detrimental factors that hampers the process of cohesive teams building is the absence of proximity and lack of regular interaction. Closeness to others help people communicate effectively as building it helps them get to know one another better. Distance, therefore, is a barrier that often affects communication. Similarly, barriers can erupt while reading a document, poor printing, badly indented text, lack of space or margins, very small font sizes, and crowded paragraphs in a document can impede the reader's comprehension or dissuade them from reading further, disrupting thus the process of communication between the sender and the receiver of the message. Also, erratically functioning machine, faulty device and systems are some of the technical barriers that affect communication between the two parties. Failure of microphone during a speech is also one type of mechanical barrier that sends by the process of communication between the speaker and the audience. Psychological barriers compared to physical barriers, psychological barriers are far more damaging and cause frequent disruptions in the process of communication. Psychological barriers are closely linked to emotional barriers which play an important role in conveying a message. Some such psychological barriers may arise due to the presence of peer distrust, absent mind mindedness, emotional apathy, intensity of feelings, lack of interest, obsessive temperament, multiple distractions, and so on between the communicating parties. For instance, on receiving a message, at times we may not be able to interpret it correctly as we may be caught up in some emotional turmoil of our own. Emotional reaction. Emotions are an integral part of human nature. Balancing them adroitly, however, is mandatory for maintaining effective communication. At times, we may get overwhelmed by our emotions, display of anger, frustration, uncontrolled euphoria, and unrestricted jubilation are some of the strong emotions often disrupt the process of effective communication. Similarly, hidden emotions such as fear, suspicion, discontent, and apprehension may also propel the process of effective communication. Rigid attitude. Human communication is all about sharing and conveying emotions and attitudes and ideas. A stubborn attitude on the part of the listener or speaker may lead to breakdown of communication. It is a well-known fact that we can't learn anything unless we purge ourselves of our preconceived notions. Organizational behaviors barrier. Now come to the organizational barriers. Besides the barriers discussed so far, there are other barriers too that we need to concisely avoid in order to maintain an effective communication process in both informal and professional situations. The discussion that follows provides a detailed discussion on some such barriers. Information overload. In various organizations, the employees in the key positions get an unrestricted flow of information. Struggling with an information overload, they often tend to ignore the important information unconcisely while processing the information. For instance, the person concerned might miss the but not in a message. This reverses the intended meaning. It is also observed that people respond to information overload by simply escaping from the task of communication. For example, wherever authorities demands detailed documentation or prepare bulky reports for procuring government contracts, people sometimes get to so much backed down by the quantum of work that they start shirking the task and at times end up producing incomplete, plagiarized, and patchy details. Fear of the superior. Inconsistent and unpredictable behavior of the superior leads to distrust and fear among their subordinates. If a subordinate has been punished for presenting unfavorable, truthful reality, realities, they may not feel motivated to clearly communicate their thoughts. This lack of motivation could stem from past experience or a failure to meet the boss's expectation for other reasons. Consequently, they may suppress innovative and crucial ideas due to their real or imagined fear. Eventually, the communication process in a scenario like this will break down. Less time for orientation and adjustment to change. Changes affect people in different ways, and it may take some time to adjust to the implications arising out of the changes that taking place both in our personal and professional life. Some communication situations indicate a need for further training, career adjustment, or status identification. If the employees do not get sufficient time to adjust, alter, or prepare themselves to face the changes around them, it hampers communication and can severely affect their performance in an organization. I don't know what will happen in the meeting. The moment you make a suggestion in the meeting, the boss starts splitting hairs. Last time he targeted me. This time I'm not going to utter even a single word in the meaning. In a nutshell, given below are the barriers that we need to watch are for communication barriers at glance, verbal barriers, differences in background, language and perception, lack of common frame of reference, semantic gap, differences in perception of a message, badly encoded or decoded messages, selection of a wrong variety of language. Listening barriers, asking too many questions, preconceived notions about the speaker, constant urge to speak, premature evaluation of message, nonverbal communication, incongruity of verbal and nonverbal messages, defensive or aggressive posture, awkward gestures, evasive facial expression, lack of proper eye contact, raised eyebrows. Physical and mechanical barriers, disturbance in transmission channels, mechanical snags, poor printing, badly indented text, lack of space or margins or very small font sizes, crowded paragraphs, incorrect choice of medium, psychological barriers, fear, distrust, absent-mindedness, emotional empathy and intensity of emotions, lack of interest, obsessive temperament, emotional reaction, rigid attitude. Organizational barriers, less time for orientation and for adjustment to a change, information overload, fear of superior. Now we go ahead. So going for strategies for overcoming barriers to communication. Following are some of the ways to overcome the different types of barriers we confront in both our personal and professional lives. Ensure clarity in messages and look for a genuine feedback. Understood others' emotions. Understand the other cultures and language variations and use the appropriate variety in a given context. Make sure that the information overload does not affect the communication environment adversely. Maintain openness and acknowledge that people may have different perceptions and opinions. Encourage innovative ideas and views so that your subordinates do not unnecessarily live in fears. Listen attentively to others. Speak with clarity and conviction. Speak with clarity and conviction. In written communication, send the data only to the people who requires that. Delete unwanted details. It's delete. Delete unwanted details. While leading a group organization, maintain transparency in policy matters. To sum up, barriers that are caused due to fear, ecstasy, joy, and tirade can easily be overcome by increasing self-awareness, careful listening, and the desire to share, build empathy toward others, makeover by understanding more about the receiver's background and by attaining the desired level of knowledge or language proficiency, we can achieve the desired result in communication. Characteristics of effective communication. What is the characteristics of effective communication? So let's learn. Effective communication is planned, coherent, or precise and clear. It ensures continuous and successful process of exchange of ideas, feelings, emotions, thoughts, and perspective. It involves use of effective body language and vocal cues which help the receiver take the full impact of the message, not only verbally but non-verbally as well. It invariably entails feedback as the receiver responds to the idea transmitted in a desired way. Effective communication is smooth and spontaneous. It is free from prejudice and preconceived notions. In organizations, effective communication helps professionals build rapport, establish a relationship propel processes, overcome personal biases, build teams, and work for a common goal. It helps the organization advertise and market its products and services, motivate their workforce, collaborate with other organizations. So this is the characteristics of effective communication. नाउ इसके बाद कम कल स्टार्ट करते हैं. आज के लिए बस इतना ही. थैंक यू.